hear me? I'm here. Do you hear me? English, English. Channel English. Do you hear me? It's okay? All right. English, Channel English. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Is it okay? Is it okay? Dama nga laaj ko ndax mu ngi dégg. English, 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 Channel English. English, do you hear me? Test streaming canal anglais. 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 English channel test streaming. Test streaming English channel. English channel test streaming English channel. Test streaming English channel. Alors, quand vous avez fini, vous me dites, hein, parce que je suis là que pour vous. Test streaming canal anglais. Test streaming English channel. Audio testing streaming English channel. Audio testing streaming audio channel. Test streaming. Test streaming. Test streaming English channel. 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 Audio testing. Audio testing. Audio testing. Test streaming. 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 Test streaming. Audio testing.
Mesdames et messieurs, je vous prie de bien vouloir prendre vos places.
On va souffrir, hein. On va avoir des orateurs super speed. Hein.
Le président, son Excellence, le président du Sénégal va bientôt arriver. Il faudrait que tout le monde soit assis ici. Executive Vice President of the China Development Bank to please come and take a seat. I would also like to invite...
Je souhaiterais inviter M. Diabonsi à venir ce soir prendre place au niveau du podium. Vous changez sans problème.
Monsieur le Président de la République, je vous prie de bien vous
Please, if you can stand up.
Excellence.
Excellency, the President of the Republic of Senegal, His Excellency, the Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire, ladies and gentlemen, members of the government institution and other Senegalese institutions, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ministers in charge of the invited countries, all protocol observed, I should like to welcome you at CHICAT. My name is Haleb Didi, and I'm in charge of foreign relations for Africa region at the World Bank. I should like first and foremost to thank the President Macky Sall and the government and Senegalese people for hosting so warmly the third edition of the Investing in Africa Forum, and other voices will also join me in thanking the Senegalese country. I am honored and pleased to facilitate this opening ceremony for this forum. This forum is a partnership between the government of the Republic of China, represented by its Ministry of Finance, and the Chinese Bank of Development and the World Bank Group. As I said earlier on, this is the third edition of this forum. The first one was held in Addis Ababa in June 2015, the second in Guangzhou in China last year in September 2016. We are now inaugurating the proceedings of this third forum with some remarks, opening remarks by His Excellency, the Vice Minister of Finance of the Republic of China, followed by the Executive President of the Chinese Bank of Development. They will be followed by the General Director of the World Bank Group, His Excellency, the Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire, and lastly, the President of the Republic of Senegal. Without any further ado, I shall leave the floor to His Excellency, Monsieur le Vice-Ministre.
His Excellency President Macky Sall, President Nassim Wei, Vice President Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. 这是谁？
首先，请允许我代表论坛联合主办方之一的中国财政。
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to meet you in the beautiful country of Senegal on the coast of West Africa. Please allow me, on behalf of the co-sponsors, Ministry of Finance of China, I extend my welcome to all of you. I would also like to congratulate you on the smooth opening of this forum, and I would like to take the opportunity to express my thanks to the government of Senegal, the World Bank, and China Development Bank for the preparation and arrangement you have made for this forum. So, as the Vice Minister assuming responsibility for international cooperation, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to visit Africa, witness its changes taking place almost every day, which are very exciting and encouraging. And we are very happy for you and also proud of your achievements. I would sincerely wish Africa and African people even greater success in the future and an even more promising future. China and Africa, although far apart in geographic locations, enjoys long-standing and never-failing friendship. In 2015, the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, proposed at the Johannesburg summit the 5 important pillars and 10 important cooperation action plans for the development of the cooperation between China and Africa, indicating the direction for the future development. In recent years, with the joint efforts of China and Africa, we have been implementing the consensus reached by the China-Africa Cooperation Forum, beginning to see the fruitful results in industrialization, agricultural modernization, infrastructure, poverty reduction, improvement of livelihood, public health, and also people-to-people exchange. To implement the action plan made at the Johannesburg summit with the joint efforts, the Investment in Africa Forum was held in 2015, 2016, respectively in Addis Ababa and the city of Guangzhou in China, with a lot of practical results. The World Bank is a determined supporter and also one of the founding organizations of this forum. Together with the Ministry of Finance and China Development Bank, the other 2 founding organizations of this forum, the World Bank is committed to provide a broader perspective for Africa and China-African development, and it has been mobilizing resources in order to develop the forum into an open, inclusive, and win-win platform for multi-benefits. So on behalf of the Ministry of Finance of China, I would like to take the opportunity to express my thanks again to our World Bank colleagues. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the world is experiencing great change. The economic globalization, informatization have greatly unleashed productivity, bringing us with unexpected and unprecedented opportunities. At the same time, however, terrorism, the refugee crisis, climate change, contagious diseases are challenging us also in an unprecedented way. In such a context, China is willing to develop together with Africa in joint efforts for shared and sustainable development. investment and trade and exchanges of knowledge are very important instruments for shared and sustainable development. And these are also important tasks for this forum. At the beginning of this forum, I would like to share with you some of my suggestions and ideas. And first of all, I think we should further align our development strategies for new opportunities of cooperation. Recently, the international community has come up with a lot of development strategies. For example, the SDG 2030, the 2063 Agenda of Africa, and the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping. These important strategies are highly relevant and consistent to each other. This forum can promote further policy dialogues, identifying the points of convergence between the different strategies, so in order that we can further promote investment and trade in Africa on a more solid strategic and policy basis. At the Belt and Road Summit held in May in Beijing this May, 6 multilateral development agencies, including the World Bank and the Ministry of Finance, signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperation in areas relevant to the Belt and Road Initiative. And we also decided to set up a multilateral cooperation center for development of finance. At the annual meeting of the World Bank in October this year, we are going to co-organize a high-level workshop with the World Bank. With these events, I'm looking forward to new ideas and the new approaches for the cooperation between China, the World Bank, and African countries. Secondly, I think it's important for us to learn from each other, explore together the way forward. China and African economies are complementary to each other, but we are also fully aware of the special differences as a result of a different natural environment, different culture, and different histories. And therefore, in our cooperation, we will stick to the principle of needed, agreed, and participated by Africa, supporting unswervingly African countries to explore the development paths of Africa with African characteristics. We are willing to share our knowledge and experiences, and with the new wisdom from our reality, we will promote the common development and common prosperity of both China and Africa. The theme of this forum is leapfrogging of African development through innovation. Innovation is the long-standing philosophy in our reform. In the last 30 years, special economic zones, the industrial parks, investment and financing mechanisms, development market, and so on, have all witnessed innovation in China for the development. And we are also encouraging the entrepreneurship of everyone and also innovation by everyone. And our efforts have already paid off. So we would like to take this opportunity to share China's experience in agriculture, infrastructure, information, ICT, education, environment, and so on, in order that Africa can further tap its potential to address its challenges and improve its governance capacity for the well-being of African countries. Thirdly, it is very important for us to integrate resources for new models of investment and finance at present. So Africa is not only the key area for the support from the World Bank and other development agencies, but also the important global investment the destination. So, for example, the World Bank Development Association will invest about 40 billion American dollars in its 18th batch of investment, and in order to ensure that the cooperation action plan between African countries and China can be implemented, and China has committed to invest about 60 billion American dollars, and we hope that encouraged by the public investment, more and more private investors will turn their eyes to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very important for us to guide and coordinate the increasing investment in Africa and improve the investment benefits. At present, it is necessary for us to explore new tools and models. The president of the World Bank, Mr. Jim Kim, proposed the cascade approach, which is in line with the Chinese approach of market operation dominated by companies and promoted by governments. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chinese Ministry of Finance will continue to respect, understand, and support Africa. I believe that with joint efforts with the World Bank, CDB, and other organizations, the future of China-African cooperation will be as colorfully beautiful as the Lake of Rose. Thank you very much.
I would like now to invite Mr. Managing Director and Chief Administrative Officer for the World Bank Group, please.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to address you in this third Investing in Africa Forum. I would like to thank His Excellency President Macky Sall and the government of Senegal for hosting this year's forum in the capital of Tarragon, Dakar. I'm also grateful for His Excellency Mr. Xi Yaobin, Vice Minister of Finance of People's Republic of China, and Mr. Yunsheng Wang, Executive Vice President of China Development Bank, for their commitment to the success of this annual conference to catalyzing investment on the continent. I would also like to thank His Excellency Daniel Cablon-Dokam, Vice President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, for joining us in this forum. Let me also seize this opportunity to express my gratitude to the African teams of the World Bank Group, the China Development Bank, and the Ministry of Finance of the People's Republic of China for promoting the cooperation between China, Africa, and the World Bank Group. Forging and strengthening these synergies is what it takes not only tackle major challenges facing the African continent, but also confronting every nation in this highly interconnected and globalized world. Our partnership has evolved and intensified over the last 3 years, and we are looking forward to using this forum and this momentum to open new doors. The Investing in Africa Forum, established in 2015 as a global forum for multilateral cooperation, is on a critical mission to promote and multiply investment opportunities in Africa by examining and developing strategies around transformational mechanisms such as industrialization, as was the case in the first forum in Addis Ababa, or taking a close look at how cooperate and expand capacity in manufacturing, infrastructure development, regional connectivity, and agriculture. like we did in the second forum in Guangzhou, we have been able to catalyze investment that is critical to unlock the potential for sustainable and inclusive growth and job creation, poverty reduction on the continent. Our cooperation under the edges of this forum has already generated concrete and tangible results. 3 MOUs and 10 agreements were signed in the second forum in Guangzhou, and many more will be signed in this third forum. The World Bank Group has scaled up its own involvement in this partnership. From 1 MOU signed in Guangzhou, the World Bank Group will sign 4 MOUs here in Dakar, including one with the government of the Republic of Senegal. Another very noticeable achievement of this partnership is the Investing in Africa think tank alliances, a platform to synergize the intellectual capabilities of research centers and the capital strengths of development finance institutions to promote sustainable and inclusive development in Africa. This initiative, unveiled by President Jin-Yong Kim and the Vice Premier of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Mr. Ma Kai, during the second forum in Guangzhou last year, has since taken off and is ready providing intellectual leadership to our partnership. I'm pleased to note that this third forum will witness the launch of the IATTA's first product, a report on leapfrogging, the key to Africa's development from constraints to investment opportunities. A joint production of the World Bank Group and the China Development Bank that will guide our discussions during this forum. I would like to congratulate the teams for making this happen. Starting today and over the course of the next few days, we are gathered here in Dakar to exchange on a very exciting theme, that of leapfrogging. In this rapidly changing world, Africa cannot afford to stay on the margins of technological innovation or changes. The future of this great continent will be determined by its ability to wholeheartedly embrace new and disruptive technologies, to innovate, and to adapt to new realities. Indeed, after 2 decades of robust economic growth, sub-Saharan Africa has endured severe headwinds, essentially due to the slump in the commodities prices. The latest African Pulse, a biannual report produced by the Africa Chief Economist Office at the World Bank, shows that the growth in this region is projected to recover to 2.6% this year, with the recovery expected to continue in 2018 and 2019. This positive prospect is underpinned by a pickup in global growth, improvements in commodity prices, and more supportive domestic conditions. Although these alleviate some economic pressure, the region continues to face a myriad of challenges on several fronts, most of which can be linked to 2 factors: weak productivity growth and limited job creation. While Africa's infrastructure gap remains regrettably wide, infrastructure is just one element of the development picture that must be viewed as a whole set of interconnected factors that lead to stronger economies and greater prosperity. Fortunately, Africa can leapfrog. Thanks to the digital revolution, Africa needs not necessarily follow the same path took by other developing countries in the 70s. By embracing technology and leapfrogging innovations, Africa can skip steps, escape some barriers so far deemed unsurmountable and shift its growth trajectory upward. Indeed, in this fast-changing world, Africa cannot afford to stay on the margins of technology progress, including changes brought by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The future of this great continent will be determined by its ability to embrace new and disruptive technologies, to innovate and to adapt to new realities. It is important to know that leapfrogging is not alien to Africa, and the continent is already leading the world in a number of innovations, including but not limited to mobile money in Kenya, pay-as-you-go off-grid solar across Africa, and drone delivery of blood and medications in Rwanda. In education sector, the African Virtual University, which has been at the forefront of using online learning in the region, was initially launched in 1997 as a World Bank project and has since boosted access to higher education and training using digital technology. In the energy sector, one leapfrogging example is Lightning Africa, launched in Kenya in September 2007. The project transformed the solar lamp market in Kenya by making modern, good quality, and affordable lighting products available to the very poor. By 2016, the project had been deployed in 11 sub-Saharan African countries, affecting almost 21 million people. Our studies suggest that by finding the right balance between top-down and bottom-up approaches, building the digital infrastructure, creating the right regulatory and business environment, investing in skills for the future, and by looking at Africa's challenges as investment opportunities and seizing them, Africa can leapfrog even higher and further. For Africa to leapfrog higher and further, we should each play our part and focus on our respective strengths. The government should create optimal conditions for citizenry and business to be able to operate and live up to their full potential. The private sector, both foreign and domestic, should change its perception of Africa, form stronger partnerships, and challenge itself to venture into new types of investment that will position the continent to leapfrogging. This requires changing the narrative from a focus on obstacles and barriers to investing, and to often overestimated risk to seeing and seizing investment opportunities in those very same obstacles. International organizations and donor countries can also become more effective facilitators, attracting their institutional and other private investors to Africa and helping in mitigating risks. China has done well in this direction with a clear results-based focused agenda. Today, China represents Africa's largest economic partner, and more than 1,000 Chinese SMEs in Africa, engaged mostly in services and manufacturing, are seizing numerous opportunities. Similarly, the World Bank Group, through our new cascading approach, has been playing its part. The new cascade approach aims to connect private financing with high-level impact development projects systematically when possible. Using this method, in analyzing projects, we first consider private investment, then public-private partnerships, and if these first two are not available, then, only then, we consider public finance. In other words, the cascade approach privileges private over government funding whenever possible. There are large sums of money that are sitting in the accounts earning little interest that could mobilize and help us contribute to the development of this bright continent. This is a win-win outcome for all parties, where investors get a reasonable return on their investments, and Africa maximize sustainable investment needed for its future development. The approach is currently being tested in 9 countries, of which 4 are from African nations, that are Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, and Kenya. These will also relieve the public sector so that it focuses more on what it does best. Our cascading approach positions us well to support leapfrogging in Africa. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, addressing Africa's challenges necessitates important investments, and public spending alone will not be sufficient. Let us all seize the opportunity of this forum to underscore again the importance of private investment in Africa's development agenda. More importantly, private and public investment need to smartly position Africa leapfrog higher and further. I thank you for your attention and look forward to a great and a productive third Investing in Africa Forum. Thank you.
I would like to now invite Mr. Yongsheng Wang, Executive Vice President of the China Development Bank, please.
His Excellency Macky Sall, Nasimbe President and Vice President Duncan, Vice Minister Xu, Mr. Yang Shaoling, ladies and gentlemen, business leaders, good morning. I am very delighted to meet with us today at the beautiful city of Dakar. First, on behalf of China Development Bank and Chairman Hu Huaibang, to extend my warm congratulations to the opening of the forum and to extend my big welcome to all the participants and express my sincere appreciation to the hospitality and meticulous arrangement by the Senegal government. Investing in Africa Forum is aimed at promoting investment in Africa, especially from China. It is a high-level forum jointly proposed in 2015 by the World Bank, the Ministry of Finance in China, and China Development Bank, and has since been co-organized by these organizations. The first 2 forums were held in Addis Ababa and Guangzhou, which yielded fruitful results. Today, 2 years later, the Investing Africa Forum returned to the African continent, and people from all walks of life are gathered here to talk about the theme of Africa leapfrogging through innovation by exchanging views, seeking common ground, and brainstorming. And I believe this will inject new vitality to China-Africa cooperation. As a key player in promoting outbound investment and financing in Africa, CDB has committed to promoting long-term strategic cooperation between China and Africa. By the first half of this year, CDB's asset exceeded $2 trillion, and its loans outstanding reached $1.5 trillion. Our international business exceeded $300 billion, and in Africa we have provided over $50 billion to 500 projects in 43 countries. The total financing provided was $36.8 billion, covering agriculture, manufacturing, social, and public services. And China-Africa Development Fund has committed $4.46 billion with paid-in capital of $3.2 billion and mobilized over $20 billion from Chinese enterprises to invest in Africa. Over the years, CDB has adhered to the principle of joint consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, and used development finance to support the economic and social development of African countries. Number one, CDB as a promoter of development. CDB has signed strategic cooperation agreements with 18 African countries to share our ideas of development and experience and to explore development paths that fit local realities. And we have established the China-Africa Think Tank Forum under the framework of bilateral and multilateral high-level dialogues to provide intellectual support for deepening China-Africa relations. Number two, CDB as a pioneer in the market. The biggest obstacle in African countries is the lack of market mechanisms, and market risks are usually overestimated, making it difficult for commercial capital to enter the market. So CDB has leveraged its strengths in providing a long-term and large capital to build market credibility and improving the business environment and creating favorable conditions for larger private investment. Number three, CDB as a co-financier. On the one hand, the CDB can leverage its own strengths to provide diversified financing. China-Africa Cooperation Forum. Under that forum, we have established China-Africa Development Fund, providing earmarked loans for African SMEs. And so we provide medium to long-term credit and investment plus lending, as well as supporting enterprises of all sizes. At the same time, we work closely with the World Bank and the Africa Development Bank, the Standard Bank of South Africa, and Barclay Africa banks, as well as Exim Bank and ICVC, to build strategic partnerships to promote syndicate loans, co-financing, parallel loans, and introducing multiple sources of fund to support the development of Africa. At the moment, the world economy is showing positive signs. However, there are still deep-rooted problems that are yet to be resolved. The impact of trade protectionism cannot be underestimated, and the world economy is still facing instabilities and uncertainties. Despite this, the momentum of rising economic strength and influence of developing countries has not changed, and the promising future of beneficial cooperation between China and Africa hasn't changed. Especially the Belt and Road Initiative has received positive responses from the African continent, opening a new chapter of China and Africa growing hand in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, the cooperation between China and Africa is facing very rare historic opportunities. With the implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative, Africa is likely to benefit from the initiative and becoming a new growth engine of global economic growth. CDB will continue to be the bridge facilitating the connection between the Belt and Road Initiative and Agenda 2063 in Africa, focusing on cooperation in infrastructure, international production, manufacturing, financial cooperation, and agricultural modernization. To participate in the significant projects in Africa and to work with our partners to promote win-win cooperation between China and Africa. Finally, let me wish the forum a resounding success. Thank you.
Excellence Daniel Kaplan-Duncan, vice-président de Côte d'Ivoire, s'il vous plaît.
Duncan, Vice President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire.
Excellence, Monsieur
Excellence, Mr. Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, Vice Minister of Finance representing the Popular Republic of China, ministers, dear General Director of the World Bank Group, representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, Executive Vice President of CDB, representatives of bilateral, regional, and multilateral institutions, CEOs, distinguished participants, dear friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, ni hao. Good morning to each and everyone. Your Excellency, Mr. Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, your brother, His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, Acting President of YMU, would have been pleased to honor his presence with this, honor this meeting with his presence, but he had to fulfill some duties. And I'm here to represent him at this important gathering and renew his heartfelt thanks for the invitation that was sent to him. I'm also privileged to take the floor here before this August Assembly. I would like to extend his heartfelt congratulations for having hosted this third edition of EAF. And this shows the greatness of the ambitions of your country in realizing this great city of Diamniadio, which is an innovative urban city. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the representatives of the People's Republic of China, to CDB, and the World Bank Group for their presence here, but also the support of their institutions for the development of Africa. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to commend the creation in 2015, as it was recalled before, the implementation of EAF as a way of reinforcing cooperation between China and Africa, but also a tool to promote investment opportunities in Africa. I'd like to thank the co-organizers of this forum, notably the Ministry of Finance of the People's Republic of China, represented by the Vice Minister of Finance, Mr. Yao Binashin, the Chinese Development Bank, represented by its Vice President, Mr. Yang Shenhuan, and the World Bank Group, represented by Mr. Shaolin Yang, General Director and Chair of the Board of Directors. By putting in place these cooperation schemes, we showcase the willingness to develop more cooperation for the benefit of African populations. The third edition of IAF, which is aiming at leapfrogging development of Africa through innovation, is pertinent because we are aiming at reinforcing cooperation between our continent and China. In fact, the trade exchanges between China and Africa have accelerated during these last years to attain about $300 billion US. When it comes to foreign exchange, it's growing with a rhythm of 40%. And on the continent, the trade balance of China is estimated at $3 billion US compared to the figures of 2016. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with an economic growth of about 5% during the last decade from 2004 to 2014, compared to the global level, which is 2.8%, Africa is visible nowadays on the economic arena, and we have more political stability despite some fragile areas, and we also have structural reforms at macroeconomic levels with the natural resources in many countries and the human capital potential make of Africa a continent of opportunities and great future. In other words, Africa is becoming more and more the new frontier for development, if not the future of humanity. Our continent has many potential for its development. In fact, our soil is extremely rich with about 30% of minerals, and Africa has about 100% of arable land that are not yet exploited, and we also have human resources that are waiting to be valorized. In a global context where the aging rate is growing, Africa in 2016 is expected to have 3.5 billion inhabitants, and it is projected to have 2.5 billion inhabitants in 2015. Africa is a young continent with 40% of the population aged less than 15 years old, and this population is a burden, yes, but is also a potential for intellectual growth and workforce to ensure a great future for the continent and even the world if it is well trained, healthy, and has the necessary know-how and skills for the demographic dividend. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, despite this growth and the potential that our continent has, the share of Africa in global trade is still minimal, and it is due to the dependence on low value added products. So the share of Africa in production and manufacture is low and weak, and our economy is strongly dependent on the variation of commodities and their prices. The productivity in many sectors, especially agriculture and industry, remains very weak due to insufficient investment in technological infrastructure as well as innovation. The experience of countries that have succeeded in their transition, such as India, Southern Korea, and Brazil, shows the way forward and the role and impact of innovation in transformation, especially structural transformation in our economy. So we need to bridge the gap that exists, and we need to work more on education and training to have more human capital that is well trained to achieve structural transformation and develop infrastructure to fight against insecurity and terrorism, to fight against climate change, and also adequate funding for our development, and to meet those challenges and leapfrog into development and accelerate our growth. The introduction of technological innovation in these various sectors appears to be the only way forward, and it has been understood since the 60s by the first president of Côte d'Ivoire, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, a great man who has tremendous leadership. And at his time, he proclaimed that the future of Africa dwells in science and technique. And he made a priority in his development approaches to put in place a research institute and training through TV and primary school. In his ambition to make Cote d'Ivoire grow more, he claimed that if Cote d'Ivoire had missed industrial revolution, Cote d'Ivoire should seize the opportunity of digital digital revolution. We need, therefore, to develop skills and technology and innovation capacities that our continent needs to realize this transformation project of Africa. The innovation potential is quite high in our continent, and the necessity of inclusive, strong, and sustainable growth and efforts in our continent are taking us towards this result. But we have obstacles to investment, which are investment capacities. And I would like for our countries to show more commitment to fund research, science, and innovation through allocating more budget to these sectors. Each country should allocate 1% of its budget to innovation, with the ambition to reach 1% of GDP, and the involvement of PPP can help us bridge this gap and reach the development and revolution, technological revolution that we are aiming at. So we need to promote knowledge and skills as well as innovation in the heart of our policies for development, to favor dialogue between exchanges of ideas and innovative reflection among decision makers and researchers, but also give opportunity to young African researchers and Africans in the diaspora, as well as sub-regional and regional organizations to publish their reports and findings. Today, we know that development in Africa cannot be dissociated with the one of new technologies and innovation in general. In fact, access to the digital sector favors the growth of GDP, and within these trends in Africa, the potential market is big and is being confirmed with poverty alleviation. And we've seen examples in Kenya, South Africa, Senegal, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Cote d'Ivoire. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Senegal, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to Cote d'Ivoire, the government, under the auspices of Mr. Alassane Ouattara, has put in place mechanisms to develop the spirit of creativity of citizens of Cote d'Ivoire. In the sector of information, resources have been allocated and invested to allow the Polytechnical Institute, Felix Houphouët-Boigny in Yamoussoukro, INHB, the center established by the World Bank and the Institute for Technology and Innovation, ESATIC, to train young Africans in new technologies and innovation. And we've also introduced the teaching of ICTs in primary school, and the objective of all this is to give ICTs its place in the economy of Cote d'Ivoire. And the actions that are put in place is the implementation of a national network with the optic fiber of 7,000 kilometers by the end of 2018. And we already have 2,000 kilometers of optic fiber, but we also want to provide each citizen a computer with internet connection, and this project has been initiated by the National Agency of Telecommunications, but also put in place a fund for research with an amount of 500 million francs CFA to be upgraded to 1 billion francs CFA, and another fund for the promotion of agriculture and the creation of the virtual university to allow e-training for about 5,000 citizens, the creation of a zone for biotechnology in our future Silicon Valley on a space of 680 hectares, and the support of the government to inventors and researchers by covering their production costs. And the last initiative of the government to give a new impetus to the sector of innovation is the implementation in July 2016 with the support of the AFDB of an Ivorian Fund for Innovation. This fund that is estimated at 131 francs CFA, 131 billion francs CFA, is aiming at supporting companies, especially startups, in their evolution, and this will help invest sustainably in technological enterprises in Côte d'Ivoire as well as in the Wayini region, thanks to physical platforms as well as virtual platforms. To these actions, we have structural reforms to improve the business environment, to dematerialization of bureaucracy, especially for customs procedures. The objective is to put in place and maintain the private sector as the main engine of the Ivorian economy, and we need to underline that about 63% of the investments during the period 2012 to 2016 were conducted by the private sector, and it allowed to Côte d'Ivoire to attain a strong economic growth of 9% during this period of 2012 to 2016. Today, the efforts that are deployed in many African countries for innovation are bearing their fruits in many sectors such as agriculture, health, transport, energy, and trade. In many African countries, we see the development of mobile money and mobile communication. In Côte d'Ivoire, about 131 million users are registered, and 8 million of them are using mobile money, and they transfer about 17 billion francs CFA as transactions, and they improve financial transactions in our country. And in this sector, 120,000 people are employed with a revenue of about 1,000 billion francs CFA, which is about $2 billion US. In the energy sector, we have solar kits, photovoltaic kits that are produced, which are solutions to generating energy in the remotest areas. We have other innovations to be signaled on the African continent, in particular when it comes to the creation of applications and softwares. We have the educational tablet, the immunization brochure that has been digitalized, and many other projects. We also have the mobile kiosk platform that has been established in Rwanda. In Senegal, we have an agricultural project and an application in Ghana for false or counterfeit drugs, and we also have a 2020 application in Kenya to tackle traffic. We also have the CardioPad tablet in Cameroon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, innovation, in my opinion, is the shortcut to attain the Sustainable Development Goals, especially for Africa. If we look at the challenges facing our continent, as it is being recalled by His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara during the 5th edition of Markets in Abidjan on the 26th of March 2017, I quote, "It's through integration of science and technology in the production models and organization that Africa will be able to face the future challenges related to climate change, the availability of renewable energy, food security, and health for all, industrialization and job creation, end of quote. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our strong hope is that at the end of this forum in this beautiful city of Dakar, we see the emergence of a new dynamic to promote innovation everywhere in Africa, especially among the African youth. I thank you for your kind attention. Sheshe.
Et enfin, Monsieur le Président Macky Sall.
What is over to President Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal. I thank you, Excellence Mr. Daniel Kablan-Duncan, Vice President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Senegal, the Vice Minister of Finance of the Republic of China, head of the Chinese delegation, the representative of the General Director of the World Bank Group, the Vice President of the Chinese Bank of Development, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear guests, dear public and private partners, and multilateral institutions. I should like also to express, to distinguish the sub-regional African institution, ladies and gentlemen, following Ethiopia in 2015 and China in 2016. Senegal is honored to host this third forum in Africa's investing in Africa. Thank you for having accepted our invitation. I should like Mr. President to be my interpreter towards my friend President Ouattara for his constant availability and his response to our appeals. I met with him in New York 3 days ago, and he intended to be in Dakar. Likewise, the president for Ngassime called me last night just to tell him that he wouldn't make it because due to national emergencies. I should like really to thank you, Mr. Vice President, because you represented Mr. Ouattara, and your full and exhaustive remarks will enable to enrich, without any doubt, this forum, which is very timely. I should like to commend the massive participation of countries, international institutions, and the private sector to this forum. Your presence is for us a mark of trust and satisfaction. I should like to thank particularly our partners from China, and I should like also to convey my gratitude to the President Xi Jinping, President of the Republic of China, the government, and the Senegal and the Chinese people for the willingness and the commitment by the Chinese government to work with Africa. I would like also to extend my gratitude to the World Bank Group, co-organizer of this forum with Senegal and China. And this is a symbol. Over the last years, the political and economic relations between China and Africa, generally speaking, and Senegal in particular, have significantly improved. With the World Bank Group, we have excellent relationship or partnership in driving our policies and programs towards growth and social and economic development. Therefore, it's naturally that we gather here in Senegal to think about, to reflect together on the best ways to promote investment, stimulate changes, and create shared prosperity. Progress in Africa through innovation is the topic of this forum. We couldn't find a better topic for a continent looking for emergence. On the path of emergence, we need to have means to transform positively and sustainably our political system. For sure. That should be done through innovation. I mean, a new spirit that translates a real willingness to break with the practices and ideas we have so far. We have to change with the business as usual, as used to say English-speaking people. It's up to firstly to the public power, to the state to do it. The Prime Minister, I know that you are actually experiencing several reforms, but also African states have to drive the change, because as we inspire political policies, we are in charge of the implementation. If there is no change towards innovation and transparency in the processes, all that we're actually saying will remain in vain. That's the reason why our financial administration, in particular, the Minister of Economy and Finance, the General Director of Port and Treasury, that's innovation should be materialized by our procedures. We have to move to e-government, I mean electronic governments. If we, as a public state, if we cannot reach this step so far, or this will remain in vain, forum after forum, we shall actually repeat what we're going to say. I mean, change should start by ourselves. It's important that we bear this in mind as decision makers. If we want to go to progress through innovation, we have to think and act differently in implementing the public policies. Those policies should be healthy, stable, and they should be predictable, but also they should be transparent and diligent. These are the prerequisites to inspire trust by citizens and trust by the partners. I would like to underline the importance of the core importance of good governance in driving the public policies. One topic that you will debate during your proceedings. When confidence, trust is present, then investment can thrive, because on both sides we are assured that the commitment will be fulfilled, and this is important. I should like now to mention, to touch on the partnership relationship. I said earlier on that Africa is on the path of emergent path, is looking for emergence. Africa has resources. Africa has needs, for sure. Africa has opportunities. The main question is how we can value the resources through a intelligent, a smart partnership, a partnership for a shared prosperity. I do insist on shared prosperity, which requires from the investor to be protected in his rights and interests, but likewise the hosting country also, because we, in the spirit and the mindset, we have to go towards a win-win partnership. I do comment the fact that this forum will focus on investment, because I am convinced that if support aid can support the development efforts, it cannot substitute to the efforts. Like everywhere, Africa cannot develop through aid, and I think that this is this applies to everywhere. Aid can, however, support all development effort. But anyway, we have launched for more than 15 years now throughout the continent the new Partnership for Africa Development, and NEPAD, I mean, and as you know, Senegal is honored to be actually the president, and the pillars are rooted in the pillar which aims at developing the infrastructure in Africa. I would like to implement this program with a joint program of the indispensable basic infrastructure for Africa's development. It's we have railway project. I know that people do not like talking about railway because it is very costly, but we have to build a connection between African countries. Otherwise, we cannot develop intra-African trade and commerce. We have to develop African railways. I do insist on that. In Europe, I had a commissioner which who actually shifted his mindset regarding railways and has actually a fund of railways. But anyway, we need to build the communication infrastructure, roads, bridges through the African continents. Sometimes for even less than 1 kilometer, you have a to surround 8 kilometers, whereas you would need just to build a 1 kilometer bridge. We have these projects, airport, also agri-industrial project, and regarding electricity and the development of public partnership is currently well implemented throughout the continent. You have also digital infrastructure that should support such innovation. PIDA covers the 2012-2040 period, and we have decided until 2020 to engage more than 60 billion USD, American USD, to fund those infrastructures. And without any doubt, the funding of this need shall be done not through aid, but also through investment and public-private partnership. At the national scale, we are working through the Pro-Senegal Amazon, which one of the basic pillar aims at working in transforming the basic economic. I can mention agriculture, which is currently experiencing a revolution with the productivity being significantly improved. I was mentioning energy also. Senegal was able in few years to implement, to achieve its energy mix in order not to depend on oil, to go on new alternative sources. We have also, with respect to infrastructure, developed PPP models with the World Bank Group, to the SFI and other private partners. The Turnpike, the toll that we've used to come here, is actually an instance to command this kind of partnership that can also increase the private investment throughout the continent. And I should like to commend the countries and partners companies that are supporting us in implementing the Plan Senegal Émergent. With our public partners, with our public and private partners, Africa actually is entering a new growth dynamic that we have to sustain by responding to some questions. What should we increase to attract private investment? How to convince? How to convince each and everyone that Africa is nowadays a place of growth where we can invest and secure its investment, but also make it profitable. Which funding mechanisms would support private investment? I have noted with interest the communications by the General Director of the World Bank, the Vice Minister of Finance, but also the Vice Minister of China Development Bank. As a banker, he believed that the risk is over-evaluated in Africa. So truly, it's not that important that we pretend it on the debt of the African countries. African countries are not suffering despite all the theory regarding African debt. But even for the partnership project, they are profitable as compared to what is being done in some countries. We are paying a lot on risk insurances, and this forum has to reflect to how to mitigate it. But I would like also to plead for the private sector, African private, because here in Africa they have very serious private businessmen without having huge capital, but or who are accessing to the foreign market with difficulty. Sometimes they can build financial companies, but really I do plead for the African private sector that needs to access resources, and I think that and I believe this forum investing in Africa in relation with the World Bank should bring, but at least enlighten us with respect to accessing private capital, because the the international private sector needs to work jointly with the national private sector, and so far there are bottlenecks. Because we states do not, we've experienced those the privatization, but we have anyway to work together to support the private sector. But I mean the serious private sector, which is able to value as the investment. How should we favor also collaboration, I said earlier on, between foreign private investors and the African private sector? I hope that you will cover in depth these topics so that our countries, when we will discuss your agenda topic on agriculture, agribusiness, energy, education, new technology of communication, taxation, even though businessmen don't like talking about taxation, it should be a shared partnership, and the activity should be profitable, but also for the country that will enable to invest on infrastructure, security, and create the favorable conditions for private investment. But you will also deal with funding and risk management as well as governance. and to bring, to address those challenges, we will have to innovate by changing paradigm and vision through the mechanism of the relationship between partners. Personally, I am used to saying that Africa should not be considered as a continent for the future, but only for the future, believing on a bright future in a world where you have to fight every single day. It's like accepting a check without fund. So Africa should be considered today as a stakeholder of present that will underline, that will draw the lines of the future. Africa's future, Africa's time is not for tomorrow, it's right away. And that is one of the merits that I can see in this forum, Investing in Africa. We are here to discuss between partners to identify together our challenges and priorities, to look for consensus solutions, joint solution, and profitable solutions. We wanted to host you in this new town, new city of Diamniadio for its symbol. 4 years ago, exactly, this site of Diamniadio was quite a desert, a no man's land. There are just some, we had here just some farms with some basic, installations. For now, we have erected gradually infrastructures that represent the heart of the new city conference center, which is hosting this forum, hotels, housings, universities, industrial park, and an administrative city, a city of science, sport and commercial centers, but also a turnpike or toll that will make the link, and very early an electric train that will link Dakar to the new international airport. That will be inaugurated in December 7, more precisely, and this site will host also a new port, a new manual port funded by the private sector. I know that other African countries are experiencing the same positive experiences. We've had just some instances by the Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire. We have a lot of other challenges to address, but we're experiencing new good news throughout the continent. We are in the area of strengthening the democratic process throughout the continent and the emergence effort. In this new dynamic, I am sure that through investment and partnership, Africa can achieve very shortly the conditions of its economic takeoff. We are available in collaborating with all our partners, and I do hail and this meeting, and I declare open the third forum on investment in Africa, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As our distinguished speakers have stated it, we will be proceeding. One of the concrete outcomes of these fora are the conclusion of a series of agreements between different parties connected to this forum. So this year we have a total of 13 such agreements that are going to be signed in front of us today under the watchful eye of our hosts and our VIP guests. So I'm going to be calling on the signatories one by one, and then I hope that they can just come and sign and go back, and then invite the other ones to come. So the first MOU is on strengthening strategic cooperation in agriculture between the Ministry of Agriculture of China, the Ministry of Finance of China, and the World Bank. So I invite Mr. Zhongying Wang and Mr. Jürgen Forgele to come to the table. Thank you.